If you want to make the absolute highest possible monthly net income after all your expenses on a short-term rental investment, while also spending the lowest cash outlay or the lowest purchase price, this video is going to walk you through exactly how to make that happen. If the goal is financial freedom, then my thought is it makes no sense to go through the time, the effort, the expense, the brain drain of investing in this beautiful, typically expensive short-term rental that after the fact you realize doesn't actually cash flow. So it's not getting you any closer to financial freedom. And unfortunately, that seems to be the case with a lot of short-term rentals these days. However, there's a pocket of the country where you can get incredible returns, cash-on-cash returns, net cash flow going into your pocket on a monthly basis that for some reason nobody's talking about, and that is the Midwest. My wife Taryn and I got to a place of financial freedom and being able to leave our full-time jobs because of these Midwestern Airbnbs about 3.5 years ago. We primarily personally invest in Indiana, and I've helped several hundred other people at this point apply this strategy and create significant cash flow in their own lives, and I'll share some of those results with you here in this video. And by the way, if you're interested in working with me personally through this step-by-step process of identifying the right deal, lining up the financing, putting your systems and tools in place to have a really high cash flowing short-term rental, then you can set up a call with me at the link that just popped up. It's livingoffrentals.com/call, and that'll take you to a form that you can answer just a couple quick questions, and then you'll get a link directly to my calendar, and we can have a discussion about your goals and about what you're looking to do and see if this program is a good fit for you, because it's not a fit for everybody, but for the people that it is a good fit for, typically it's a really good fit. So in this video, I'm going to talk through number one, why the Midwest, number two, how to pick the absolute best pocket within the Midwest, and then an example deal that a new member of my first vacation rental investment blueprint program just identified following this strategy just 2 days ago. So first off, why am I so big on the Midwest? And this isn't just because I'm from the Midwest or I grew up in the Midwest. I will invest anywhere where I can make some money. We own a few short-term rentals down in Florida, but they don't make nearly the ROI as our Indiana short-term rentals, which I know seems counterintuitive for a short-term rental or what a lot of people think of as a vacation rental. You think, well, a lot more people are going to want to travel to Florida, but that's the way it is. And the way I like to describe it is this part of the country, the Midwest, and even into the Southeast is just on sale. If you compare it to the coastal regions, what you can get for your money just goes so much further. The price per square foot is just so much lower. And this part of the country is made up of a lot of former industrial towns, and during the Industrial Revolution, they built up these towns and they built a lot of multi-unit properties and a lot of kind of unique combinations of multiple units. And I think these are the best types of properties. If you can buy a property with one relatively low set of fixed expenses, but have multiple streams of income, especially at short-term rental rates coming in on that property, that typically leads to a really high ROI and really high cash flow. Also, the nightly rate in this area, most people assume to be so much lower than in more mainstream vacation rental areas, the mountainous regions or the coastal regions. And yes, they are sometimes, in a lot of cases, a bit lower, but they don't move in tandem with the purchase price. So just because you're buying $1 million property doesn't mean that the nightly rates are going to be like 5 times as high as a property that you can get for $200,000, and so you would think that those kind of move up and down together. They don't. So if you buy something that's relatively low cost, but yet it's in an area where there's some local draws, there's a population, the nightly rate still tends to be elevated enough to where the cash flow is pretty significant. And we'll go over an example of that. Also, in these regions, typically the taxes and the regulation is just generally lower than what you see in the coastal regions. Typically, that's where you see the most regulation, the highest taxes, and so you can find just a much lower cost basis on these properties that still have pretty elevated nightly rates. And the final reason I love this strategy of investing in these Midwestern multi-units is because if regulations ever do change or, travel changes or there's some huge economic downturn that prevents people from traveling, I can always convert these properties into long-term rentals and they still cash flow really well. So I'm never going to be in a position where I'm owning all these properties that are doing great as short-term rentals, and then some big shift happens, and overnight I'm hemorrhaging cash flow. I've got negative cash flow because I can't rent these out as short-term rentals anymore. So then the next big question is, where is the right pocket to invest within the Midwest? Because I don't just recommend buying in any random location within the Midwest and that you're going to make money. As a matter of fact, in our state of Indiana, the vast majority of places I would not recommend investing, because a lot of the state of Indiana is just kind of very remote farmland, and that's not typically the recipe for huge ROI. Now, you can invest in remote areas, but then the property itself needs to be the destination that gets people to go to that destination. And that can be kind of a risky strategy. But by buying just outside of larger population centers, so just outside of the bigger cities throughout the Midwest, you have sort of this perfect storm or this perfect combination of getting a really budget-friendly property because you're just outside of the city. So in the city, typically price points are very elevated, but sometimes you can get a property for half the cost, a third of the cost, the same property as in the city, but it's so much cheaper just outside. But yet, because you're so close to this population center, you'll have people travel to your area for vacations or getaways because you're buying in a place that has some local attractions, but then you're also going to attract people because you're buying a property that's so inexpensive and the nightly rate is so affordable, that are traveling for work trips, for funerals, for weddings, to visit friends, just, for holidays. They don't want to stay with their family, but they want to stay close by to their family. So there's all these other ancillary reasons that you'll get bookings in addition to the vacation rental type bookings as well. So we personally invest in a town just an hour outside of Chicago. It's right along Lake Michigan, so it's got some local draws. People can go to the beach and be on Lake Michigan in the summertime. There's also a casino there. There's wineries in the area. There's a big outlet mall. So there's all these local draws that would draw people from the big city, but then there's also a lot of people that stay because they want to visit Chicago. They don't want to stay downtown Chicago, but they want to be close enough to drive or take the train. We have a train that goes right through our town into Chicago. And then there's also all of the other reasons that people want to be in this area, because there's a population of 30,000 people in this town. And so there's always work trips and weddings and funerals and all those other things. So this is the case for a lot of places throughout the Midwest. So being just outside of towns throughout Wisconsin or throughout Michigan or throughout Illinois even, or Ohio or Kentucky or Iowa. There's all these cities that you can buy a property just outside of and get such a great deal on, especially if it's a multi-unit, and still have high enough nightly rate and occupancy to get some really, really great cash flow. So if you do this right, oftentimes you can own a fully rehabbed, fully set up short-term rental that's a multi-unit that you couldn't build for anywhere close to the cost of what you can buy one of these properties for. So the intrinsic value of the property is super high because they're not building a whole lot more of these in the area because the cost of construction just doesn't make sense. So this creates even more demand for the existing properties. So I want to go over a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about here, of a deal that a brand new member of my program who just started following this system just recently identified just 2 days ago when we were on a call together. We went through this deal. I thought it was just a perfect example of the type of property that I'm describing here. So let me switch screens here and share with you what this one looks like. So you can see here is the listing of the property. This is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's kind of on the outskirts of Fort Wayne, Indiana, like I talked about. And this is a 2-unit property. This is a fully rehabbed property. So let's go through the pictures here and I'll show you what this looks like. This is currently being used as a short-term rental, ironically. So it's already set up as a short-term rental. It's performing well, even though there's, I think, some room for improvement. I go through in my program, exactly how to set up a listing that just pops and stands out and performs better than the competition. And I think there's quite a few things that this current owner could do, or the buyer of this property could do, to really increase performance on this property. But there's not a whole lot of construction stuff that needs to be done. It's already been gut rehabbed and they're asking $239,000. And this is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-unit property. So each one's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And one of the cool things about owning short-term rental like this that has multiple units is that you get the versatility of renting out or booking individual units. So you can book 2-bedroom, 1-bath units at the same time and have 2 streams of income coming in, or you can have a separate listing that has a premium price on it for larger groups that want to travel. So typically in the Midwest in the summertime when kids are out of school, larger groups are traveling, friend groups or families are traveling together. They want to stay in a place together. They like having separate sleeping spaces and separate areas that they can enjoy, but at the same time, it's all in the same property and they don't have to rent 3-4 hotel rooms. They can just rent one big house. So you get the versatility of the best of both worlds. So here's where this is located. I always like to go, like, especially if I'm investing remotely, like this member of the program he's down in Florida and he's looking at the Midwest. And so if you're investing remotely, sometimes it's hard to know where it is that I'm buying, but I always like to look at the street view and then we'll get into the comps too, to just make sure that the performance right in this area makes a ton of sense. So on the street view, it's almost like walking down the street and you can see what the neighborhood looks like and the types of properties, and are these well kept, or are there signs that this is a rundown area and not a place that you'd want to have a short-term rental. But this looks like just a nice Midwestern area. So then from there, I go to the actual comparables on Airbnb. So you can plug in the address. So you can take the address of this property, plug it in, and it pops up on Airbnb right here. And then you zoom in and you can see all of the other short-term rentals around it. So if I pull this map up and there's no short-term rentals around it, then that's a bad sign. That either means that you're kind of out in more of a remote area where you better have that destination type property that everybody wants to travel for, or there's some sort of restriction in this town that's preventing people from wanting to invest there, or the numbers just don't make sense. But this is a really good sign. This means that there's a lot of other ones around it. And you can see as you look at these, there's 105 reviews on this apartment right down the street. There's 87, there's 177, there's 121, and these are all really high reviews. So this is a really good sign that people are traveling here, that people like these types of properties. And so now you can go into the individual listings that are, I've already clicked on them, but some of these, like this individual listing here, and you can see what these listings look like. Are these similar to the type of property that you're going to provide? So you can see this is a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath. So very similar type of apartment. And you can see what the price points are. So you can go down and read through every single review that each guest has left. You can see when they stayed there. So this person was there just 1 week ago. This was October, September. So you can see how many generally bookings that they're getting per month in different seasons. Right now, we're in one of the slowest time periods at the beginning of November in the Midwest, but you can look at the opposite season then and say, okay, in the middle of summer, when it's a peak season, what does that look like? Then you can go to the calendar and you can see, okay, it's right at the beginning of November, but you can see they've already got a whole bunch of bookings in November, several in December. So at this price, which is right now $128 this time of year, they're getting some bookings, and it should be priced about where you'd want to see to have several bookings. Then you can go to the opposite season. Well, this one isn't opened up. Most properties are opened up over the next year, and you can see what the price points are in the opposite season. I don't ever just look at one comp though. If you only have one comp to compare it to, that's a risky strategy. I want to look at lots of comparable listings that have 100 plus reviews, 177 reviews, 4.98 star rating. That means this person, Stephanie, knows what she's doing. Yeah, she's got this down. It's very difficult to maintain this high of a rating over that many reviews if you don't know what you're doing. And so over time, she's probably figured out pricing as well. So that last one was an apartment. This is a full house, a larger house that sleeps 6 guests, which is still smaller than our super listing where we list both units together, but it gives you an idea of where price points would be on that type of property. So she's already booked out for almost all of November, half of December. So this probably is an indicator that this price point's a bit too low. And if you go through it, she just charges $125 every single night across the whole year, which is not a pricing strategy I think she's leaving a lot of money on the table. I'm happy to talk pricing strategy with you, Stephanie, if you watch this video. But it gives you an idea that if you had that product, that's the basement price point. Again, the next one, 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath. It's a townhome, very similar type of, property. It's a joined wall or connected property similar to ours. And they are totally booked out in November and a bunch in December. So even in the slowest season, one of the slowest seasons in the Midwest, these properties have quite a few bookings at these price points. So I would go into it thinking I could increase my price, I could charge a premium, especially if you can create a listing that appeals to the ideal guest in this area and it outperforms all the others. It's going to be the first one that pops up. And some of these pictures aren't the most ideal, in terms of this being a cover photo. There's a lot of tweaks that you can make to really make it pop. But let's just look at the numbers. So based on really conservative numbers, I always recommend looking at all these comps, and then you'll come up with a range of nightly rate and occupancy rate, and then you can plug in the most conservative end of that range. And if the numbers still look good with the most conservative numbers, you know that this is probably going to be a really great deal. So plug in a purchase price of $235,000. You can put in all the other numbers. This is our analyzer tool that we use in our program. The repair costs are $5,000 that they're estimating, and they're estimating about $20,000 in furnishing for this size property. Anyone can get a DSCR loan. That's an investment type of loan. It's based on the property itself. As long as it cash flows, they'll give you a loan of 80% of the value. There's several different lenders. I'll list some of the lenders in the description of this video if you want to click on those. Some of them that I've worked with and I've recommended. It's such a great product. This is a 30-year product. It'll finance 80% of the purchase price, and obviously this is going to cash flow really well, so you qualify for this property. They're at about 7.5% right now. So you plug in all those numbers, and then you put in your average daily rate for the high season and for the low season. And again, I recommend going as conservative as possible just to see in a worst case scenario, what does this look like? So that's exactly what he did here. 75% occupancy in the high season, and then 40% occupancy in the low season at only $150 and $130 average daily rate. I think he'll do better than that, but we'll just put that in there for now. So after the cleaning fees, which flow through to your cleaner, making about $75,000 of gross revenue on this $235 property. A lot of properties in the coastal regions that are closer to $1 million, people are hoping to make $75,000 on. And this can be done on a $235,000 turnkey property that actually might come with furnishings too. They said they might throw those in anyway. I'd recommend upgrading a lot of those furnishings, but at the same time, that's such a low lift type of investment. So here's how the numbers all flesh out then. The yellow boxes automatically calculate based on all your inputs. So conventional mortgage is going to be $1,300, your insurance $100, $292 property taxes, cleaning fee, is being charged right here, and it's flowing down to the cleaner as an expense. Utilities around, these are just estimates for utilities, maintenance, consumables like toilet paper, stuff like that. So all your expenses need to be included here, even a set aside for maintenance. Even though you're not always going to have maintenance, you need to set some aside. And so if that's the case, then the total income is going to be about 75. The expenses will be just under 50. And so every single month, you'll be able to stick $2,100 in your pocket after all your expenses, all your set asides for maintenance, everything. So based on putting a 20% down payment on this property, you're making over 31% on every single dollar that you put in. So your down payment plus furnishings, plus this includes everything, your furnishings, every penny, your closing costs that you have into this, based on this cash flow of $2,000 or $2,147 per month. That means you have almost a 32% return. That doesn't take into account the appreciation of the property, the principal pay down, all the tax benefits that's going to come with this. This is just purely based on the cash flow. So I get really excited about these types of properties because for some reason, nobody is talking about this. If you just Google how to invest in short-term rentals, everybody wants to talk about the, high-end Gatlinburg cabins and the Destin Beach, beachfront vacation rentals. And for some reason, people act like that's all that exists. And I think there's a place for those. I'm not down on those, but if the goal is financial freedom, this has led my family to financial freedom. It's led many other people to financial freedom that I've worked with, that I know. And so again, if you're interested in working with me through this strategy, I'm happy to do that. Just go to livingoffrentals.com/call. You can book a call with me. But if not, hopefully this video and this deal, is proof that there are other ways of investing in short-term rentals that can create significant cash flow, even in this bit higher interest rate environment. This is using interest rates that exist today. So thanks again for joining me for this video. God bless. I'll see you in the next video.